The hot summer wind whipped dust across the barren streets of Redemption Creek as Virgil Quade rode in, his shadow stretching long and lean across the sun-baked earth. A man whose eyes had grown as hard and impenetrable as the gun metal strapped to his hip. The year was 1878, and the West was still wild enough to break a man or remake him if the breaking hadn't killed him first. Virgil dismounted his dun-colored stallion outside the town's lone saloon, his spurs jingling a melancholy tune that matched the heaviness in his chest. 3 years since Antietam Ridge, 3 years since he'd buried his heart alongside a promise made to a dying man. Love was a luxury a man like him couldn't afford, not again, not ever. Watering your horse or yourself first, stranger. The livery boy couldn't have been more than 16, freckled and curious. Horse first, Virgil replied, voice gravel rough from days of riding. Always the horse. The town of Redemption Creek stretched before him, unremarkable save for its position as the last civilized outpost before the unforgiving expanse of the Arizona Territory. One main street, a handful of businesses, and the promise of work for a man who knew how to handle trouble, which was precisely what had brought Virgil here. Inside the saloon, the air hung heavy with tobacco smoke and piano music. Virgil ordered whiskey neat and found a corner table with his back to the wall. Old habits from years riding with the Rangers. Mr. Quade. A well-dressed man approached, his vest straining against a prosperous belly. Hammond Wilcox. I sent the telegram about needing a man of your particular skills. Virgil nodded once, gesturing to the empty chair. The situation is delicate, Wilcox began, lowering his voice. There's a small ranch outside town, the Double D. Woman named Sophia Donovan runs it since her father passed. Been having trouble with cattle rustlers, or so she claims. Virgil noted the skepticism in Wilcox's tone. You don't believe her? Let's just say the lady has a reputation for independence that some folks find unsettling. Wilcox straightened his tie. As head of the Cattlemen's Association, I've been asked to look into it. If there are rustlers, we need them dealt with before they start hitting the bigger spreads. And if there aren't, Virgil asked. Wilcox shrugged. Then perhaps Miss Donovan needs to consider selling to someone more capable? The implication wasn't lost on Virgil. He'd seen it before, lone women pressured to sell valuable land once their male protectors were gone. I'll ride out tomorrow. Excellent. Wilcox stood, dropping a folded map on the table. The Double D is marked. Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Quade. I trust you'll get to the bottom of this matter quickly. After Wilcox departed, Virgil nursed his whiskey, eyes drifting to the saloon's dusty window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent strokes of crimson and gold. Beautiful and brutal, just like this land. Dawn broke with cruel efficiency across the plains as Virgil rode toward the Double D. The ranch came into view gradually, a modest 2-story house. Barn, corral, and bunkhouse nestled in a verdant valley that contrasted sharply with the surrounding arid landscape. A creek, the source of the ranch's surprising fertility, cut through the property. As he approached, Virgil spotted a figure on horseback mending fence line. Even from a distance, he could tell it was a woman by the way she sat in the saddle, straight-backed but fluid, moving with her horse rather than against it. She saw him coming and stopped her work, one hand dropping to her side where Virgil suspected she kept a pistol concealed in the folds of her riding skirt. That's far enough, she called when he was within earshot. Virgil reined in his horse, raising his hands slightly. Miss Donovan. Sophia Donovan, who's asking? Her voice carried clearly across the distance, confident but cautious. Virgil Quade. Wilcox sent me about your rustler problem. She studied him for a long moment before gesturing him forward. As he drew closer, Virgil got his first good look at Sophia Donovan. She was younger than he'd expected, perhaps 25, with sun-browned skin and chestnut hair pulled back in a practical braid. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, were the deep blue of twilight. Didn't ask Wilcox to send anyone, she said, turning her horse to ride alongside him toward the ranch house. He seems concerned about your cattle. Hammond Wilcox hasn't concerned himself with anything but his own interests in all the years I've known him. She shot Virgil a sideways glance. What did he tell you? That you're having trouble with rustlers, that some folks don't believe you. A bitter laugh escaped her. Some folks don't believe a woman can run a cattle ranch without a man's help. Rustlers are real enough, though. They dismounted at the ranch house and Sophia led the way to the porch. A young Mexican woman appeared in the doorway. "Elena, coffee for our guest, please," Sophia said, then turned to Virgil. "You might as well sit, Mr. Quade. This conversation requires caffeine." Once settled with steaming cups before them, Sophia laid out the situation plainly. Started 3 months ago. Small numbers at first, 2 or 3 head missing from the north pasture. Thought it might be wolves. Then we lost 12 in one night from a pasture with a locked gate. You have ranch hands, 3, good men loyal to my father and now to me, not enough to patrol the entire property at night and still work during the day. Tracks, covered, whoever's doing this knows what they're doing. She leaned forward. Last week they left something behind, a warning. From her pocket, she produced a folded paper and handed it to him. In crude letters it read, "Sell now or bury what's left." Virgil studied the note. "Any idea who might want your land badly enough for this? Take your pick. Wilcox himself has made offers, insultingly low ones. There's the railroad survey that came through last month. And Harlan Black's spread borders mine to the north he's been trying to expand for years." Virgil handed the note back. "Why hold on? Seems like you've got plenty of people willing to take this trouble off your hands." Something flashed in her eyes, pride, determination, maybe both. "This land has been in my family for 20 years. My father died working it. My mother is buried beneath that cottonwood by the creek." She gestured toward a distant tree. "The Double D isn't just property, Mr. Quade. It's my heritage and my future." Virgil nodded slowly. He understood that kind of loyalty, even if experience had taught him its cost. "I'll need to ride your boundaries, get familiar with the layout. I'll take you myself." She stood, her decision made. "Elena can prepare the old foreman's cabin for you, unless you'd prefer to return to town each night." "Cabin's fine," Virgil replied. "Better to be on site if there's trouble." They spent the remainder of the day on horseback, Sophia showing him the ranch's perimeter, the places where cattle had gone missing, the water sources and grazing lands. She knew every inch of her property, spoke knowledgeably about breeding stock and grass quality. This was no dilettante playing at ranching. Sophia Donovan knew her business. By sundown, they'd return to the main house. Sophia's ranch hands Pedro, Isaac, and a massive Norwegian called Sven joined them for a simple but hearty supper. The conversation was practical, focused on ranch matters, but Virgil noted the easy respect between Sophia and her men. After dinner, Virgil stepped onto the porch for a smoke. The night was clear, stars pricking the vast black canopy above. He heard the door open behind him but didn't turn. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Sophia said, coming to stand beside him. "Sometimes I think the sky is bigger here than anywhere else." Virgil nodded, offering no reply. "You don't talk much, do you, Mr. Quade?" "Not unless there's something worth saying." A faint smile crossed her lips. A rare quality in a man. They stood in companionable silence for a moment before she spoke again. "You're not what I expected Wilcox to send." "What did you expect? Someone more pliable? You have the look of a man who makes up his own mind." Virgil tapped ash from his cigarette. "Is that good or bad for your purposes? Depends on what you decide, I suppose." She turned to face him, the moonlight catching in her eyes. "What sort of man are you, Virgil Quade?" The question hung between them, unexpectedly intimate. Virgil felt a long, dormant part of himself stir in response to the directness of her gaze. "The kind who finishes what he starts," he finally answered, deliberately keeping his tone neutral. She nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Good night, then." The foreman's cabin is stocked with fresh linens and basic supplies. We rise early here. For 3 days, Virgil immersed himself in the rhythms of the Double D, riding with the hands during the day, conducting his own surveillance at night. He found signs of the rustlers, a cut fence mended hastily, hoofprints leading to a creek where they disappeared, a cigarette butt of a brand not smoked by any of the ranch hands. On the fourth night, Virgil positioned himself on a ridge overlooking the north pasture, where the fattest steers were grazing. The moon was a slim crescent, providing just enough light to see by without giving away his position. Near midnight, he caught movement at the far end of the pasture. 3 riders, moving with practiced stealth, herding a small group of cattle toward a gap in the fence line. Virgil mounted silently and circled wide, planning to cut them off at the neighboring property. The rustlers were so focused on their task, they never noticed him until he appeared directly in their path, rifle raised. "That's far enough," he called. The lead rustler drew his pistol, but Virgil's shot knocked it from his hand before he could aim. The second man tried to flee, but Virgil put a bullet in the ground before his horse's hooves. "Next one's not a warning," Virgil stated flatly. The third man, barely more than a boy, raised his hands immediately. "Don't shoot, we were just following orders." "Whose orders?" Virgil demanded, keeping his rifle trained on them. The leader, nursing his injured hand, spat on the ground. "Go to hell." Virgil rode closer, his expression impassive. "You boys have 2 choices. Tell me who sent you or spend the next 20 years in Yuma prison." The youngest broke first. "It was Mr. Black, Harlan Black. He said no one would get hurt, we were just supposed to make it look like Miss Donovan couldn't manage the ranch," the leader cursed. "Shut your mouth, Tommy." By dawn, Virgil had delivered all 3 rustlers to the sheriff in Redemption Creek, along with their full confessions. Harlan Black had been paying them to steal cattle gradually, trying to undermine Sophia's operation until she was forced to sell. When Virgil returned to the Double D, he found Sophia waiting on the porch, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept. "Sheriff Briggs sent word," she said as he dismounted. "You caught them?" Virgil nodded. "Black was behind it, just as you suspected. Sheriff's deputies rode out to his place this morning to arrest him." Relief washed over her face, followed quickly by anger. "All this because I wouldn't sell to him. All because a woman dared to succeed where he thought she should fail." "Some men can't abide being bested, especially by a woman," Virgil observed. She studied him for a moment. "And you, Mr. Quade, how do you feel about being hired under false pretenses? Wilcox must have known he and Black are thick as thieves." "Suspected as much," Virgil admitted. "Didn't much care, job's the same either way, find who was stealing your cattle." A tired smile touched her lips. "Well, I'm grateful regardless. The Double D is safe because of you." She paused, seeming to consider something. "Will you stay for breakfast? Alina makes biscuits that might convince you there's a God after all." The invitation was innocent enough, but something in her eyes, a warmth, a connection, sent a warning through Virgil's body. He needed to leave soon. The job was done, and staying risked complications he'd sworn to avoid. "Need to report back to Wilcox," he said, already backing toward his horse. Disappointment flickered across her face. "Of course. Your payment, send it to the hotel in town. I'll be there a day or 2 before moving on." He was halfway to his horse when her voice stopped him. "Will you at least come to dinner tomorrow? A proper thank you for saving my ranch." The sensible answer was no. Virgil knew it, felt it in his bones, yet he heard himself say tomorrow. Sundown, before mounting up and riding away, cursing himself with every hoofbeat. That evening in the Redemption Creek saloon, Virgil confronted Hammond Wilcox. "You knew Black was behind the rustling," he stated, sliding into the chair across from the cattleman. Wilcox's expression remained carefully neutral. "I hired you to investigate Miss Donovan's claims. You did so. You hired me expecting I'd find nothing or that I'd play along with the scheme." "I hired the best man for the job," Wilcox countered. "What you found and what you did with that information was entirely your business." Virgil leaned forward. "Black's been arrested." "He's talking, trying to save his own skin." Says you and some others have been trying to force Sophia Donovan out for months. A flicker of concern crossed Wilcox's face. Harlan's desperate. He'll say anything. Why the double D? There's plenty of land around here. Wilcox hesitated, then apparently decided honesty was his best option. The railroad's coming through, Mr. Quade, not the main line, a spur to connect the mines up north to the southern Pacific. The survey team determined the best route crosses Donovan land. Understanding dawned. And whoever owns that land when the railroad comes through stands to make a fortune. Progress is inevitable, Wilcox said with a shrug. Miss Donovan could have profited nicely from a timely sale. Now, perhaps not. You're still going to try to take her land. It wasn't a question, and Wilcox didn't treat it as one. Business is business, Mr. Quade, nothing personal. Virgil stood, dropping a gold coin on the table. Consider our business concluded. The following day, Virgil found himself unexpectedly restless. He told himself he was simply waiting for Sophia to send his payment, but the truth was more complicated. Something about the woman and her determination had gotten under his skin, a dangerous development. By late afternoon, he'd made his decision. He would attend dinner at the Double D as promised, collect his payment, and inform Sophia about the railroad plans. Then he would ride out at first light, putting as much distance as possible between himself and the growing complication that was Sophia Donovan. The sunset painted the horizon in fiery hues as Virgil approached the ranch house. Sophia greeted him on the porch, wearing a simple blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, transforming her from capable rancher to undeniably beautiful woman. "You came," she said, sounding genuinely pleased. "Said I would," he replied, suddenly awkward in a way he hadn't been in years. Dinner was a surprisingly elegant affair, with Alina serving courses that would have been impressive in the finest Denver restaurant. The conversation flowed more easily than Virgil had anticipated, covering everything from cattle breeding to books they'd both read. After the meal, Sophia suggested they take coffee on the porch. The night was warm, the stars brilliant overhead. Virgil knew he needed to tell her about the railroad, then make his excuses and leave. Yet he found himself reluctant to disrupt the unexpected peace he'd found in her company. "Something's troubling you," Sophia observed, breaking into his thoughts. Virgil sighed. "No point in delaying. Railroad's planning a spur line through your property. That's why Black and Wilcox want your land so badly." Surprise flickered across her face, followed by understanding. "That explains the survey team that was so insistent on crossing my property." Her eyes narrowed. "How did you find out?" "Wilcox told me after I confronted him about Black. And you're telling me now because they'll try again. Different tactics maybe, but the same goal." Sophia was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "Thank you for the warning. I won't sell, not to them, not to anyone." Could be dangerous, standing in the way of men like that. A small, determined smile curved her lips. "I'm not afraid of a fight, Mr. Quade. I never have been." "No," he agreed softly. "I don't imagine you are." Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Virgil knew he should leave now before this went any further. He stood abruptly, should be going, got an early start tomorrow. Sophia rose as well, standing close enough that he could smell the faint lavender scent of her hair. "Where will you go? North, maybe." "Montana Territory's hiring guns for Indian troubles." "Or you could stay," she said, her voice low and earnest. "The Double D could use a man with your skills, especially now that I know what I'm up against." Warning bells clanged in Virgil's mind. "Not looking for permanent work." "Not offering charity, Mr. Quade. It's a business proposition. You'd earn your keep." He shook his head. "Better if I move on." "Better for whom?" she challenged, stepping closer. "You've been running from something since you arrived." "I recognized it because I've seen that same look in my own mirror." "You don't know me," he said roughly. "I know enough." Her eyes held his, unflinching. "I know you're a man who keeps his word, who stands against injustice even when it would be easier not to, who notices things others miss." "That's the job, nothing more." "Is it?" She reached out, her fingers lightly touching his arm. Or is it who you are, Virgil? The use of his given name, spoken with such familiarity, sent a jolt through him. He stepped back, breaking the contact. I don't stay in one place long, don't form attachments. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You're afraid. Anger flared, quick and defensive. Careful, Miss Donovan, but Sophia didn't retreat. What happened to make you so determined to be alone? The question hit like a physical blow, breaking through defenses long maintained. Virgil turned away, staring out into the darkness. For a long moment he said nothing, warring with the impulse to simply walk away. Antietam Ridge, he finally said, the words feeling rusty, unused. 3 years ago, I was guiding a family Blakes, John and Mary, their daughter Catherine. He paused, the memories washing over him with painful clarity. Comanche raiding party caught us in the open. John was hit first. I got Mary and Catherine to the rocks, tried to hold them off. Mary took an arrow meant for her daughter. Virgil's hands gripped the porch railing. Catherine was 19. Beautiful, brave, we'd been close, made plans. Sophia said nothing, just stood beside him, a silent witness to his pain. Held off the raiders until a cavalry patrol heard the shooting, but Mary's wound festered. She died 3 days later. Catherine never forgave me for not saving her mother, for not being enough. It wasn't your fault, Sophia said softly. Doesn't matter whose fault it was. Learned my lesson. A man in my line of work can't afford entanglements. People die or they leave. Either way, it ends badly. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady, determined. My father used to say that fear makes for poor decisions, that living your life afraid of what might happen means not really living at all. Your father ever lose everyone he cared about? He lost my mother when I was 14, lost his brother in the war, nearly lost this ranch twice to drought and once to rustlers. She turned to face him fully. But he never stopped living, Virgil, never stopped loving. Different kind of man than me then. I don't think so, she said. I think you're exactly the kind of man who understands that some things are worth the risk of loss. Their eyes met again, and this time Virgil couldn't look away. Something was happening between them, something he'd sworn never to allow again. I should go, he said, but made no move to leave. Then go, Sophia replied, her gaze steady, or stay, but don't use fear as your reason for either choice. Virgil felt himself at a crossroads, pulled in 2 directions. The safe path, the one he'd followed for 3 years, led away from this ranch, this woman, this dangerous possibility of connection, the other path. I can't offer you what you want, he said, his voice rough. You don't know what I want. A partner, someone to share the burden of this place. Someone who'll stay. She stepped closer. What I want is a man who sees me as I am and respects what I've built here, who fights alongside me, not for me, who understands that strength and vulnerability aren't opposing forces. Her hand came up to rest against his chest. I think that man might be you, Virgil Quade. He should push her away, should mount his horse and ride until Redemption Creek was nothing but a distant memory. Instead, Virgil found himself transfixed by the courage in her eyes, the openness of her expression. I swore I'd never do this again, he whispered. Then don't, she said simply. Don't call it love if that word frightens you, just stay and see what happens. That's simple. Nothing simple about it, she admitted with a small smile, but some risks are worth taking. Before he could respond, a shot rang out from the darkness, the bullet splintering the porch railing inches from where they stood. Virgil reacted instantly, pulling Sophia down behind the solid wood of the porch. Get inside, he ordered, drawing his pistol. Like hell, she replied, already extracting a shotgun from beneath the porch swing. This is my fight too. More shots followed, coming from multiple directions. Virgil counted at least 3 shooters, maybe 4, positioned around the house. Wilcox didn't waste any time, Sophia muttered, checking her weapon. Black's men, more likely, Virgil replied. Wilcox is too cautious for a frontal assault. A voice called from the darkness. Donovan, we just want to talk business. Talking usually involves fewer bullets, Jenkins. Sophia shouted back, recognizing the voice of one of Black's ranch hands. Virgil touched her arm. "They'll try to circle around to the back. We need to move." They slipped inside where Alina was already armed with a rifle. "Sven and the boys are coming from the bunkhouse," she reported. "Tell them to stay put," Virgil said. "Too risky to cross the open ground." A crash from the back of the house indicated someone trying to force entry. Virgil moved swiftly through the kitchen, firing twice through the door. A cry of pain confirmed his aim was true. "One down," he called to Sophia, who was covering the front windows. For 20 tense minutes, they held off the attackers. Sophia proved herself a capable fighter, cool under pressure and accurate with her shotgun. When one of Black's men made a dash for the front door, she dropped him with a blast that shredded his leg. Finally, after an exchange of gunfire that left 2 of the attackers wounded and 1 dead, the remaining men retreated. "They'll be back," Virgil said, reloading his pistol. "With more men next time," Sophia nodded grimly, "or they'll try burning us out. We need to get word to the sheriff." "No time," she replied. "They'll have cut the road to town." Virgil considered their options. "There's another way. If they want this place so badly, let's make them think they've won it." By dawn, word had spread through Redemption Creek that Sophia Donovan had been killed in an attack on her ranch, and that her remaining hands had fled. Hammond Wilcox and his associates wasted no time organizing a party to ride out and investigate the situation, undoubtedly planning to stake their claims on the now ownerless property. What they found instead was Sheriff Briggs and his deputies, alerted by one of Sophia's hands who had slipped through the night to a neighboring ranch. More damning still was the wounded attacker who, facing a hanging judge, had confessed everything, including Wilcox and Black's plan to drive Sophia off her land by any means necessary. 1 week later, with Harlan Black and Hammond Wilcox awaiting trial in the county jail, Virgil found himself once again on the porch of the Double D. Sophia joined him, handing him a cup of coffee. "Sheriff says they'll likely get 20 years each," she reported. "The railroad's sending a representative next month to negotiate proper compensation for crossing my land." "Good," Virgil nodded. "You'll get a fair deal now." Sophia studied him over the rim of her cup. "You've been avoiding me since that night." He couldn't deny it. After the attack, he'd thrown himself into helping secure the ranch and gathering evidence against Black and Wilcox. But he'd carefully maintained distance from Sophia herself, retreating behind the walls he'd built years ago. "Been thinking," he admitted. "Dangerous pastime," she said with a hint of a smile. "What conclusions have you reached?" Virgil set down his coffee, choosing his words carefully. "I'm not the staying kind, not built for it." Disappointment flickered in her eyes, but she nodded. "I understand. When will you leave?" "That's just it," he continued, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "Been trying to convince myself to go. Every morning I tell myself today's the day I'll ride out." Hope sparked in her expression. "And yet you're still here." "Still here," he agreed softly. "Why?" The question hung between them, demanding truth. Virgil took a deep breath. "Because for 3 years I've been running from ghosts, telling myself I was better off alone, safer." He moved closer to her. "But watching you fight for this place, for your home, made me realize something. Fear's a poor companion for the long ride." Sophia's eyes softened. "What are you saying, Virgil?" "I'm saying maybe I'm tired of running. Maybe I want to see what happens if I stay." Her smile bloomed slowly like a desert flower after rain. "And what about love? Still sworn off that too?" Virgil reached out, his calloused fingers gently tracing the line of her jaw. "Some vows are made to be broken, I reckon." When he kissed her, it felt like coming home after a long journey, unexpected and yet somehow inevitable. Sophia's arms wound around his neck, drawing him closer as she returned the kiss with equal fervor. They broke apart, both breathing heavily, foreheads touching. "I'm still not an easy man," he warned. "Got rough edges that may never smooth out." Sophia laughed softly. "And I'm still a stubborn woman running a cattle ranch in a man's world. We'll match each other, rough edge for rough edge." For the first time in 3 long years, Virgil felt the weight of his past lift slightly. There would be challenges ahead. The life they were choosing wouldn't be simple or always peaceful. But as he held Sophia in the golden light of morning, he understood that some risks were indeed worth taking. "Then I'll stay," he whispered against her hair. "Not just to see what happens, but because you might be what I've been looking for all along." Sophia's answering smile contained all the promise of dawn breaking over the boundless prairie. Together, they faced the rising sun, two solitary souls who had found in each other not just companionship, but the courage to begin again.